Hey, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and today we're coming with the Rico Report. As y'all already know, but just in case if you're new, these Rico Reports are extremely random. So anything that wasn't necessarily big enough, maybe in my opinion, to just make a separate video in itself, we try to combine as many random topics basically into like one little podcast kinda. So we have a lot of really interesting things to talk about. First of all, a lot of NFL writers came together and ranked all of the stadiums in the NFL. Apparently, FedEx Field was ranked dead last. Do we really have the worst stadium in the NFL? And we're also going to look into why they felt like FedEx Field was the worst one, because they also give an explanation as to why they gave us dead last in that category. Also, are we going to have a lot of RPOs in 2023? Something to look at. On top of that, Montez Sweat being the most underrated edge rusher in the NFL. We got to talk about that and a lot more. So y'all know these Rico Reports are extremely random. We're bringing in a lot of random stats, random Pro Football Focus grades, random rankings like this stadium situation or Montez Sweat being ranked too low. Any random information, whether it's funny, informative, whatever. If it concerns the Commanders and it just kind of fell in between the cracks and I wasn't able to like make a separate video for it and really expound upon it, we're just including a bunch of those type of things in these Rico Reports. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm that subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get a notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I'm so excited about this regular season coming up. Make sure y'all pull up to every regular season game live stream and postseason as well. I'm speaking into existence. I'm gonna do a preview video breaking down what you should look for and expect, most important matchups and stuff like that for each upcoming regular season game in video form. Then I'll live stream the entire regular season game and postseason as well, all 4 quarters. Then I do game reviews after every regular season game in video form, and then I do another live stream afterwards where I open up the phone lines for y'all to call in. You, the viewer, right now watching this video, have a chance to call in with a 3-minute timer and say whatever you need to say about the team or whatever you really want to talk about, but more than likely the team, especially after victories or even after L. If y'all want to complain and you want to bring up the names that you blame the most for the loss or whatever you want to do. But stay tuned for all the content. Without further ado, let's get it.
You tell your family you can be a commander.
All right, so I feel like it makes the most sense to go ahead and get the stadium thing out of the way. And it's really interesting because out of 30 NFL stadiums ranked, FedEx Field was dead last with a stadium capacity of 62,000. And they even include Google reviews, like exactly how many stars we have on Google reviews and things like that. And we have a 4.0. The best voted stadium, Minnesota Stadium, the US Bank Stadium, has a 4.7, SoFi has a 4.5, Lambeau has a 4.8, AT&T has a 4.7, Lumen Field has a 4.6. I'm curious where the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is. Okay, they're 8th with 4.7. So it's not like our review is that terrible. Nobody has just awful reviews. We have a 4.0 in the Google reviews, and I mean, that's not that bad compared to most restaurants, at least in my area of Atlanta. I'll be seeing 3.5 stars. Like, all right, cool. Let's go ahead. We can work with that. You know what I'm saying? But 4.0 is interesting, especially for it to be the lowest. So I guess stadiums just typically have pretty high ratings overall, I guess. But they said no surprise here. And a dominant last place finish, the home of Washington's NFL team since 1997, again finishes last. So I'm assuming maybe they do this every year. 27 ballots had FedEx Field in the bottom 5. 25 of those ballots had FedEx Field ranked as the NFL's worst stadium. Quote from Ben Standig, who's a Commanders reporter, said, "It's old but not revered. The basic amenities are outdated for this 21st century world, with the locals choosing to stay away in recent years amid the losing, non-contending, and ownership embarrassment. Cheers from hordes visiting fans often dominate the atmosphere. Of course, they'll be trapped in brutal traffic on the way out as well. Suckers. And yes, the rails break, pipes burst, and parking ain't cheap. At least everyone knows the new stadium is a must. Hold your nose for the next 5 to 8 years in the interim and hope that winning games becomes the best distraction," unquote. I do feel like that's a pretty good synopsis. I haven't been to a game at FedEx FedEx Field since I was like young, but from everything I'm hearing, that sounds about right. And hopefully winning can overrule this. But also on top of all of that, Josh Harris is already making a lot of changes to the stadium already. Updated field, updated lights, updated screens, updated seating, a whole bunch of stuff, man. Updated speakers even. And even like what's available in the stadium to eat. Railing. Ben Stan did complain about the railing. I'm assuming this article was written before Josh Harris made a lot of the changes that he's already made to the stadium. He plans on making more. They already set aside a multi-million-dollar budget on upgrading the stadium inside and out. Just basically to make the experience better for the fans and everybody that visits the stadiums, which is really cool. So we won't be dead last for long at the very least. And maybe if they were to go back and rate today, maybe we would at least get somewhere in the 20s. I don't think we would be dead last already with Josh Harris's changes on the stadium. But those furthermore changes that are on the way with that multi-million-dollar budget, I think that'll definitely improve things. But I think we can have a chance to jump into the top 10, top 5 with the new stadium. But I don't think with FedEx Field, the current infrastructure and things like that, traffic and all of that type of stuff, there's nothing you can really do there as far as FedEx Field goes. But as a person from Atlanta that goes to a lot of Mercedes-Benz game, and I actively root against the Falcons, so if I go there, I don't care if they're playing the Packers, the Bears, whoever, I'm wearing my Commanders jersey and then rooting for whoever the other team is other than the Falcons. But I have to admit their stadium is amazing. Retractable roof. I hope the next Commander Stadium takes a lot of the pointers from the FedEx Field Stadium. If anything, does it even better. But most importantly, I don't know if y'all seen that picture going around this viral like a couple of weeks ago. But like if you look at it, it was like a picture of what you can buy with $20 at the Falcon Stadium, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And it was like multiple food items and drinks. And then everybody else was complaining like, man, that could barely even get me a hot dog at my stadium and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure FedEx Field is the exact same. So Josh Harris, if you could do us a favor and make things just as cheap as Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I think Mercedes-Benz Stadium has the cheapest prices on food, so that would be lovely, man. But I feel like we've already spent too much time on that topic. Typically with these Rico reports, we try to bounce from topic to topic quickly, but that one I just felt like going a little bit more in depth in. Also, next up, NFL.com ranked the top 5 wide receivers to break out in their second years. Jahan Dotson ranked 4th. Behind John Mechie, number 1, which I guess by default because he never played, so I guess that's why he's getting the edge, and maybe he's going to be one of the Texans' top receivers. But to have John Mechie over like Drake London, you have Christian Watson 3rd, Jahan Dotson 4th, and then my dog George Pickens, who I love Jahan Dotson, and I'm just as much of a Commanders fan as I am a Georgia Bulldogs fan. It's like literally 50-50. But objectively, like bias aside, I think George Pickens will end up being the best receiver out of all 5 of these guys. I think it's George Pickens 1A, Jahan Dotson 1B, and I think Drake London and Christian Watson will be pretty good as well. I think John Mechie is going to be more so like a really good wide receiver too, but if we're talking about the best receivers out of this 5 right here, I think George Pickens 1A, Jahan Dotson 1B, but it's not even necessarily Jahan Dotson's fault. I mean, he has to share the ball with so many other good receivers, not even just receivers, running backs, tight ends that are going to get the ball. It's going to be really difficult for him to put up the same stats as George Pickens. But either way, with Jahan Dotson on the list, the NFL.com writer said Dotson was another rookie who excelled in contested catches, hauling in 61.1% of such targets, according to Pro Football Focus. Another juicy figure from PFF, Dotson boasted a 102.9 passer rating when targeted. That's insane. Rewatching Dotson's rookie tape, the way he consistently earned first downs against the league's top defense in Week 16 at San Francisco, moving the chains 5 times and also scoring a touchdown on 9 targets, showcased how impressive he was as a rookie and previewed the true force he could become in year 2. Just imagine if Jahan Dotson never got hurt last year. There was a certain point in the season, like a couple of weeks in, where him and Stephon Diggs were leading the NFL in touchdown receptions with I think like 4 each. That was more than Travis Kelce, more than Justin Jefferson, more than Jamar Chase. All of the top receivers, tight end, wide receivers, running back, any receiving touchdown guys, him and Stephon Diggs were leading the NFL at a certain point. Then he got hurt. And then, of course, by the time he came back, he just couldn't put up the stats to recover. Plus, QB play was bad. Offensive line play was bad. And offensive coordinator wasn't much better. So, it was a lot of factors rooting against him, working against him. But I think this year could definitely be his year. I agree with the fact that he's a top 5 guy, but I disagree with the fact that they have him at number 4. I think you literally need to flip the list upside down. Like, literally reverse the list. If you just flip it upside down, George Pickens number 1, Jahan Dotson number 2, Christian Watson number 3, Drake London number 2, and John Mechie number 1. Honestly, that's probably accurate. The only thing I would change is maybe Christian Watson for Drake London, but And I'm a big believer in Christian Watson as well. I would literally flip that list upside down. It would be far more accurate than me. Also, moving on, very random. Right now, the most bet money teams at BetMGM to make the playoffs, the Commanders at number 1 with plus 375. So I guess that goes to show that we're the most underrated team according to betting odds, because right now, based on betting odds, we're not supposed to make the playoffs, but we're the most bet on team to make the playoffs because it's just you know how betting works. It's a good gamble. Right now, you can get in low and end up potentially winning high, and the Commanders are your best bet right now, which I think is really interesting. Also, moving on, Matt Harmon of Yahoo Sports did his NFC fantasy grades. And of course, like with the letters, and the lowest grade, I guess, can be a D plus because the Carolina Panthers and Arizona Cardinals have D pluses. We have a C plus. Looking at the rest of the NFC East, the Giants are less than us with C. The Eagles, of course, have an A plus, and the Cowboys have a pretty decent B plus, but they gave us a C plus just to let you know. Also, Brandon Thorne. He does like his own film analysis, his own rankings and things like that. He has a Substack and everything that you may want to subscribe to. He ranked his top 40 defensive linemen, 25 edge rushers, and 15 interior defensive linemen. He had Montez Sweat at 25, man. And he said it was extremely tough to pick the 25th edge spot, but Sweat's steady development, tools, and trajectory were too impressive to leave him off. So with that description, it sounds like he would have him higher than 25th out of the NFL. That's pretty crazy. I mean, I know there are 32 NFL teams, but dang, man, Montez Sweat 25th. Again, we're going to get to some advanced stats to explain why that ranking is wrong. But first, Brandon Thorne went on to say in his article, selecting the last spot for this position was difficult to say the least, as there are a minimum of a half dozen or so edge rushers worthy of being mentioned. The reason for going with Sweat is based on his gradual ascension as a rusher since he entered the league as a raw physical specimen in 2019. Sweat is in the early stages of his prime at just 26 years old, turns 27 September 4th, and the foundation of Sweat's game of very good burst, quickness, and exceptional length, 35 and 3/4 inch arms that he uses to initiate first meaningful contact on blockers using a long arm stab move. The encouraging part of his development has been the counters off of the long arm that popped up in 2021 before becoming even more prevalent last season, such as inside counters, forklift, and stab chop techniques that are indications of a rusher poised to make an even more significant jump this season as he continues to refine his game. Everything he said I agree with in words. It's just the number I don't agree with, 25th. And this is why I'm going to explain why. You hear 25th, you may be like, oh, okay, that means he's better than at least 7 of the best edge rushers on other teams. And I mean, I guess, but here, listen to these stats, man. 2022, among players with at least 350 pass rush attempts, Montez Sweat was 5th in pressures, 2nd in knockdown percentage, and 1st in QB hit percentage. My fault. Pressures was pressure percentage as well. All of those were pressure percentage. So 5th in pressure percentage, 2nd in knockdown percentage, number 1 in QB hit percentage. As long as you had at least 350 pass rush attempts, Montez Sweat was at least top 5 in the most key categories for an edge rusher. As far as a per snap basis, maybe not in totality, but on a per snap basis, he was a top 5, arguably top 3 most efficient edge rusher in the NFL last year. And to have him ranked 25th is insane off of that. I feel like he's drastically underrated, even amongst this fan base right now. Some people make it seem like it's obvious that we should choose Chase Young over him if we have to choose one. I feel like it's way more of a debate than people think. Also, Spot Track pointed out the fact that the Commanders are in pretty great position to pay running back Jonathan Taylor $16 million over the next 2 seasons, final rookie deal and projected franchise tag if we wanted to do it. But again, I've already put my stance on that. Do not trade for Jonathan Taylor. We are good. First of all, on our end, I love this running back group. Of course, any running back group that adds Jonathan Taylor, you get better. But I love our running back group, and he's definitely for sure not worth a first-round pick or a first-round pick equivalent and a bunch of other picks combined at all. I'm a big no on the Jonathan Taylor situation, just to go ahead and let y'all know. But I just thought it was interesting to throw out there that technically the Commanders could afford it. We're one of the very few teams out there that actually could. Also, after the first preseason game, out of the all first round rookies that was just drafted in the 2023 draft, Emmanuel Forbes was the 5th highest ranked or graded rookie by Pro Football Focus with a 71.7. You have Jack Campbell with a 90.6, way past everybody else. That's just ridiculous. But then after week 2 of the preseason, after that Ravens game, they felt like he wasn't as good, and now his grade went down to a 67.8, which is still pretty good. That's still better than even Christian Gonzalez. He's a 67.6, so to be super super petty. Emmanuel Forbes was taking 1 pick before and has a .2 higher grade than Christian Gonzalez, and I love it. So far, he's played 31 snaps to Christian Gonzalez's 59 in the preseason as well, so that could be a big deciding factor right there. If Emmanuel Forbes would have played more, maybe his grade would be higher. But either way, Pro Football Focus only gave him like 1 or 2 sentences. They said Forbes has faced only 1 target this season, an 11-yard catch. That was against Zay Flowers, where he was giving him a lot of cushion. I hope he wasn't docked points for that, because I feel like if anything that was more of a Jack Del Rio thing, and I just feel like we should just give Emmanuel Forbes the benefit of the doubt off of the fact that we've just seen Jack Del Rio over the past few years have his corners play way off of receivers for no reason. So I'm just gonna assume that was Jack Del Rio. Maybe it was on Emmanuel Forbes, I don't know. They also said he made an impressive run stop in week 2 against the Ravens and leads the team in run defense grade with an 81.2 thus far. That's interesting. Emmanuel Forbes leads our entire team, including everybody, Daron Payne, Montez Sweat, all of those guys, in run defense grade right now, and that makes sense because it wasn't just that 3rd and 1 stop against the Ravens that was big time, but also that 3rd and 1 goal line stop against the Browns. I'm telling y'all, man, stop worrying about his weight. I think he's going to be good to go, man. I'm really excited about Emmanuel Forbes. He looks like a first-round pick out there. He already looks like one of our best corners, if not our best corner. Also, next up, the highest RPO percentage ran in the preseason week 1. You had the Colts, number 1 by far. It's not even close to second place with a 46.8% because of Anthony Richardson, of course. And then number 2 was Washington with a 25.9%. We ran RPO 25.9% of the plays in that preseason week 1 against the Browns. I'm not exactly sure how that updated by the time we got to the week 2 game against the Ravens, but I'm pretty sure it was somewhere around the same amount. So are we going to be a very RPO heavy team? That's really interesting. Next up, in really random news, random statistic, Arizona's front 7 has around 15 career combined sacks between all of their front 7 right now, somewhere less than 20. And just to let you know, Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen have 19 combined just last year alone. Again, let me say this again for if you didn't understand this. Arizona's projected starting front 7 right now for week 1 against us, all of those guys have a combined career around 15 sacks less than 20. For context, again, Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne had 19 last year alone. So that should just let you know what we're up against. If Sam Howell and those guys can't go out and ball out against those guys, I don't know who they can. I'm definitely expecting a win against the Arizona Cardinals coming up. Also, I like Jahan Dotson's success by route tree from 2022. I think it's really interesting. The only even slightly negative percentage or grade he had was in the flat. Anything else, he was fantastic and one of the top receivers in the NFL percentage-wise, because there's green, there's yellow, there's red, as you can see on the screen. In the 80 percentiles, even 90s in some places is absolutely ridiculous. And even being 60% on a 9 route is insane. That in itself is crazy too. Also, another thing I want to show y'all, if you're wondering what's on the screen right now, BetOnline AG ran every mascot through an AI machine, and this is what the Commanders ended up with through their AI machine, and that is terrifying, dog. He looks like a villain from Pirates of the Caribbean, the puppet show or something. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It's just one of those things. I had to see it, now y'all had to type of thing. That's the only reason I'm included that. I'm just curious what y'all are going to say in the comment section after y'all see it. Also, shouts out to Chris Cooley for this stat. He said, funny to think how in 2020, every team in the NFC East had a losing record, and just 2 seasons later, no one in the NFC East had a losing record. We were dead last year at 8-1, technically not a losing record, did even 500 somehow, even in a 17 game, odd number season, we still found a way to go 500. That's just Ron Rivera being so great at being average is just absolutely ridiculous. But either way, that's a great point. The NFC East had no winning teams just 2 years ago, and just 2 years later, we had no losing teams. That's insane. That's a crazy turnaround. Quarterbacks have a lot to do with that, and also coaching has a lot to do with that. The Giants' ascension is completely coaching. The Eagles is coaching, and Jalen Hurts coming along, and the way they draft, the way they handle free agency is phenomenal. And then the Cowboys are always going to have a certain floor to them, but they're just never going to amount to anything in the playoffs. Thank goodness, for our sake. And then also, Pro Football Focus ranked the top offensive linemen to them. According to them, what are the top offensive line groups in the NFL? The Commanders, of course, came near the bottom. We're 27th, and since the last time they did this article, we were 20th. We went down 7 spots. So I don't know what happened since the last time they did this article, like at some point in training camp or something like that, or right before training camp. But for some reason, we did something wrong to go down 7 spots. They have our projected starting lineup as Charles Leno Jr., Nick Gates at left guard, which is wrong, Ricky Strongberg at center, which is wrong, Samuel Cosme at right guard, and Andrew Wiley at right tackle. And then they also had the nerve to say that Charles Leno is our best player. Samuel Cosme's definitely our best player, even though I appreciate the Charles Leno love because I do feel like he gets a little bit too much hate in his fan base. Samuel Cosme is our best player, and so far in the preseason it looks like, if anything, it's Samuel Cosme number 1, and then maybe Nick Gates 2, and then you can argue between Sadiq Charles and Charles Leno for 3rd and 4th, I guess. And then Andrew Wiley, just based off of how bad he was in that preseason game against the Browns, he has to be 5th, even though I think he'll figure it out and be a pretty good right tackle for us throughout the season when we need him the most. Pro Football Focus said another line with significant turnover. Washington is likely changing 4 starters between new acquisitions and position changes, which is completely right. They're right about that. Charles Leno at left tackle is our only continuity from last year, because again, Samuel Cosme moving from right tackle to right guard, which is definitely different. That's a position change. Also, last season's group had very little in the way of continuity, but so much change doesn't help the adjustment of quarterback Sam Howell as he comes in to try and win the starting long-term job, but he already won that, so we're good to go there. Then why they said Charles Leno was our best offensive lineman. Charles Leno epitomizes solid starter. I agree with that. We're good so far in the NFL, but that means he will lose more often than many like to see, which I agree with. He surrendered 8 sacks in 2022, but allowed just 37 pressures overall on 669 pass blocking snaps, which is decent. But even after I agree with a lot of you said in sentence form, I'm not agreeing with the fact that Charles Leno is our best offensive lineman, point blank period. I like the love, but man. Also, before we get up out of here, really random. Remember Caden Smith, the tight end that we signed at one point in training camp? He was basically just a camp body. You got to remember, he's the guy that caught the overtime touchdown in 2019 against Washington that basically secured us the number 2 pick to draft Chase Young. So if you're a big Chase Young fan, thank Caden Smith, because he's not going to do much on the field for us in a Commander's jersey, but he did plenty for us in a Giants jersey for us to end up with Chase Young. Now, hopefully Chase Young balls out, so like this joke actually makes sense and we can feel good about it. But because if Chase Young doesn't work out, then this doesn't even matter. This Caden Smith stat is completely useless, but I think Chase Young will ball out this year, so I'm gonna just go ahead and say the joke now and put my name next to Chase Young balling out. But that's really random though. Shouts out to Caden Smith, man, for basically getting us Chase Young. But who knows, if we ended up not with the 2nd overall pick and would have taken somebody else, who knows how different this franchise will be. I'm just really rooting for Chase Young to work out though, him and Montez Sweat. Hope we can keep both. But yeah, man, that's the end of this Rico report. Please get in the comment section, let me know what you feel about everything discussed in this video, all the random news, stats, rankings, grades, everything, just random stuff. That's what these Rico reports for. They're funny, they're random, they're just super, just out of nowhere, make no sense. Why are we even talking about this? Everything that fell between the cracks. So let me know if you want more Rico reports like this. And man, I really appreciate y'all. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm that subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors. Your name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Catch y'all later. I'm out.